Under the cover of an empty Pacific night, the USS Sterett cut through black waves like a ghost. There were no stars overhead, only a low-hanging sky wrapped in thick clouds that seemed to press down on the ship. The sea hissed against the hull, a constant whisper in the dark. Inside the bridge, the red-lit sonar screen pulsed with slow, steady beats, until it didn't. At 2:13 a.m., Seaman Ryan Keller leaned into the radar console, squinting at the jitter in the sonar returns. The screen had started flickering, picking up irregular signals like echoes with no source. He adjusted the gain. No change. He tapped his headset. "Control, this is Watch. I'm getting irregular sonar bounce, requesting confirmation from aft array." No answer. He turned toward the open deck, suddenly aware of how quiet everything had become. The usual thrum of the engine was still there, but beneath it, something else. A vibration. Low, rhythmic. Almost like a growl vibrating up through the soles of his boots. And then he saw it, something moving across the far side of the deck. It was quick, low to the ground at first, then rising. It passed under the floodlights but cast no shadow. Keller's mouth went dry. It was not human. Too tall. Too smooth. And the way it moved, it was wrong. It felt like it was sliding more than walking. Instinctively, he grabbed his radio again. "Control, this is Watch, I repeat, something's out there." Static exploded through his earpiece. Then a new sound bled in, soft but clear. A voice. Wet and cracked. It whispered, "You're not alone." Keller staggered backward, nearly dropping the headset. His eyes darted across the deck. The shadow was gone. Frantic, he scanned the area, checking blind spots near the crane rig and the stacks of gear tied to the stern. Nothing. Not even a ripple in the mist that now coiled low along the deck like fog. Then the sonar pinged again. Once. Twice. A long pause. And then a sharp, drawn-out echo from beneath. The screen lit up with a massive contact, far too big to be another vessel. Too slow to be a torpedo. It hovered under the ship, as if waiting. Keller stared at the pulsing shape. He whispered, "It saw me." His pulse thudded in his ears, louder than the sea itself. A drop of sweat rolled down his neck. He backed away from the console, unsure whether to run or wake the entire deck. But he could not move. It was not just fear, it was presence. The sense that something was watching, studying, measuring. Then, just as suddenly, the sonar cleared. The echo vanished. The hum in the hull ceased. And the ocean returned to silence. But Keller did not. He stood frozen, heart pounding, waiting for something to happen. Something worse. Because in that moment, beneath that impossible calm, he knew nothing about the night was routine anymore. By morning, the USS Sterett was already steaming back toward Guam, but no one was talking. Orders had come down hard and fast, sealed lips, no written reports, and absolutely no mention of what happened on the deck during the night watch. Ryan Keller hadn't slept. He sat alone in the mess, eyes locked on the bulkhead like it might peel open and show him that thing again. Every footstep behind him made his fingers twitch. Every creak of the hull tightened something in his chest. He wasn't the only one. The mood on board had shifted. Conversations stopped when officers passed. Sailors whispered in hallways and passed glances instead of words. Some had already deleted their phone notes. Others, like Keller, wrote theirs on paper and stashed it deep in their sea bags. Then the rumors started. Someone had seen the files, radar logs, sonar returns, watch reports, and said they were marked top secret, naval intelligence only. Another claimed to have overheard the captain arguing with someone over satellite link, insisting this was not part of the exercise. That phrase spread fast, not part of the exercise. What made the paranoia worse was the silence outside. No one on board could reach anyone, no friends, no family, not even secure military networks. When one sailor asked to speak with a chaplain, he was told the request would be reviewed by upper command. That same sailor was reassigned to night janitorial duty the next day. Still, fragments of the truth began leaking out. On social media platform X, an anonymous account, clearly military, based on the jargon and timestamps, posted a chilling sentence: "They told us to shut up, but I'll never unsee what was on that deck." That post vanished within the hour, but not before it was screenshot and circulated in private Discord servers frequented by veterans and defense enthusiasts. Within 48 hours, speculative videos began appearing. A channel known for military whistleblower content uploaded a blurry analysis of the Sterett's course changes during that night. Something happened, the narrator said over static-filled background music. The Navy doesn't shift an entire destroyer's mission for a radar malfunction. The video hinted at the involvement of DARPA, shadow projects, and unidentified deep-sea phenomena. It quickly racked up hundreds of thousands of views before being removed due to community guidelines violations. But no mainstream outlet touched the story. Internally, sailors began to realize the full weight of the situation. They had all signed post-incident non-disclosure agreements, rare but not unheard of. Most assumed it was to cover up a failed test or a glitch in new sonar equipment. But others, especially those like Keller who had seen the shape, or heard the whisper, knew it went deeper. Keller heard a petty officer say, "They're trying to bury it." Not just the report. Us. And the worst part, no one could even explain what it was. A new weapon? An undisclosed foreign submarine? Or something that had lived down there far longer than any of them could imagine? Whatever had come up from the trench, it had left its mark. Not in broken metal or damaged systems, but in the silence. In the eyes of those who had seen it. And in the terrifying certainty that they were never meant to return with the memory still intact. June 15, 2024. The USS Sterett cut silently through dark Pacific waters, a lone sentinel in a region growing more unstable by the hour. The mission had been sold to the crew as a routine patrol, presence operations, maritime reassurance, and subtle pressure as tensions flared with China. The destroyer's silhouette drifted just over 200 miles east of Guam, skirting the edge of the Mariana Trench. Below, the ocean dropped deeper than Everest is tall. And beyond the horizon, somewhere to the northwest, the Chinese aircraft carrier Liaoning had gone dark 3 days prior. Captain Laura Hensley, a no-nonsense officer with a reputation for handling classified assignments, had briefed her senior staff only once before departure. According to the logs, this was a coordination run. But the extra tech loaded aboard the ship, crates stamped with DARPA insignia, cables running into sealed compartments, and engineers who kept to themselves, told a different story. The USS Sterett was testing something. No one used that word out loud, but it lingered in every conversation. Below decks, Sonar Officer Lieutenant James Carter had been watching patterns for days. What made this patrol different was not what they could see, but what they could hear. The new system, a low-frequency experimental sonar array installed days before departure, could penetrate the ocean depths farther than anything previously used by the fleet. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat, casting waves through the trench and listening for echoes that had never been recorded. Carter described the first test as hearing the void whisper back. Sailors were uneasy. The tech crew from DARPA avoided eye contact. They held hushed meetings in locked rooms and marked their whiteboards with strange symbols and timestamps instead of words. Even senior non-commissioned officers noticed the pattern: new gear, strange protocols, no outside communication, and command officers who seemed to be following someone else's orders. By 8 p.m., the sky had turned to ink, the sea stretching flat and endless. Watch shifts cycled without incident, but something about the silence felt artificial. Not peaceful, hollow. As the crew rotated into night posture, stories passed between bunks. Sailors claimed to have seen small lights trailing the ship below the surface. Others mentioned a pulsing vibration, faint but constant, like something humming far below the audible range. They chalked it up to the new sonar, but even Carter could not explain it. "Sterett is listening to something no one's ever heard before," he told one of the technicians in private. "And it's listening back." At 10 p.m., the bridge received a coded update from Pacific Command, brief, ambiguous, and requiring acknowledgement without reply. That sealed it for Hensley. This was not just a test. It was surveillance, or deterrence, or maybe something else entirely. What she did not say, but everyone now felt, was that the Sterett was bait. Beneath them, the Mariana Trench waited. Cold, black, ancient. And if the experimental system worked as intended, they were about to knock on a door no one had ever opened. The sailors might not have known it yet, but the abyss was about to knock back. Ask ChatGPT. At exactly 11 p.m., the first signs of disruption crept in, not loud, not violent, just subtle enough to be missed by anyone not paying close attention. In the Combat Information Center, Petty Officer Maria Torres stared at the radar screen as it pulsed, glitching with sudden, irregular blips. They were fast, appearing and disappearing too quickly to lock. She leaned forward, adjusting the gain, tapping the side of the console like it might fix itself. The contact was not solid. It had no shape, no consistent velocity. Just motion. Something, moving. Or pretending to. Torres called over Lieutenant Carter, who watched for a few seconds before shrugging it off. Probably a false return. Echoes bouncing off the trench wall, he said. But he did not sound convinced. Across the ship, several other stations began reporting strange interference. The encrypted radios crackled with bursts of static that were not loud but oddly rhythmic, almost patterned. Some sounded like muffled voices, too distorted to make out, but unmistakably human in cadence. No call signs. No identifiers. Meanwhile, on the outer deck, Seaman Ryan Keller stood alone at the starboard rail. He should have felt the usual stillness of the open sea, the low rumble of engines, the steady wind. But something had changed. The air itself felt different. It pressed down on him, heavy, damp, and unnatural. He rubbed his forearms, realizing he had goosebumps. The temperature had dropped, yet the forecast had shown nothing unusual. He keyed his radio, but the only response was a burst of garbled static. In the distance, over the low growl of the waves, he thought he heard something else, a faint hum, too deep to be mechanical. Inside, the radar room's tension grew. A few sailors joked about ghost echoes and deep-sea mermaids, but no one laughed hard. Torres kept glancing at her screen. The contacts were increasing. Small, erratic bursts of movement. All heading toward the ship from different angles. When she tried to trace one, it simply disappeared, as if it had never been there. Captain Hensley entered CIC without a word, stepping directly behind Torres. She did not ask for a report, just stared at the screen. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Elevate watch posture. No exterior signals, she said flatly. No one questioned the order. Is this still part of the test? Carter asked her, trying to sound casual. She glanced at him. No. This is something else. By midnight, the strange readings intensified. The sonar began returning echoes that made no sense, massive objects moving slowly, then vanishing as if they dove deeper than the system could reach. The engineers said nothing, just scribbled notes and left the room. Keller returned below deck, pale and shaken. He told Torres the wind had stopped moving. Just stopped. And that he had seen something just off the port side. A ripple in the water. Like something had surfaced, watched, then slipped back under. Still, no alarms were raised. No panic. Not yet. But the feeling spread quietly, like oil across calm water. The crew began to avoid silence. Radios stayed on, even when filled with noise. The officers kept glancing toward the sonar station. And Captain Hensley remained unshaken, as if this was the moment she had been waiting for. At exactly 2 a.m., the lights failed. Without warning, every bulb on the USS Sterett blinked twice, then extinguished completely. For a brief, suffocating second, total darkness blanketed the ship. No moonlight, no auxiliary glow, nothing but the sound of wind and water and the sudden intake of breath from dozens of stunned sailors. Then the scraping began. It started low, like steel dragging across stone. Then it deepened, lengthened, rising into a slow, echoing grind that vibrated through the hull itself. Below deck, sailors froze. On the main deck, a scream pierced the air, sharp and panicked. Someone dropped a flashlight, and it rolled, its beam slicing across the wet deck. Keller, still on watch, spun around toward the bow. In that moment, a soft blue glow flickered on the surface of the ocean, bioluminescent trails, glowing and fading like veins under skin. In that brief light, he saw it. A shape, human in outline but wrong in every other way. Taller than any man on the ship. Still. Upright. Facing him. Its surface shimmered like oil, limbs too long and slightly bent, as if unused to standing. Then it moved, not walked, but shifted, and in an instant, it was gone. Keller stumbled back, colliding with the bulkhead behind him. He blinked hard, heart slamming against his ribs. Bridge, this is watch. We have something on deck, he shouted into his radio. No response. Only static. Inside CIC, sonar lit up with a single, enormous pulse. A contact had returned, but not from the surface. From below. Deep below. The contact moved slowly, circling the Sterett, then stopped directly underneath. Technicians stared at the readout, jaws clenched, not speaking. The echo was massive, amorphous, no consistent shape, no speed that made sense. Just presence. A second sonar ping. Then a third. Then the screen froze. The computers shut down. One by one, terminals across the ship died, rebooted, then flickered back to life with corrupted text and symbols, nonsensical characters like a language no one could read. The internal intercom crackled, spitting out distorted audio, deep, reversed words that resembled no language the crew recognized. Captain Hensley stormed into CIC, barking orders to isolate systems and reroute to backups. But every system was infected. Even the most secure navigation display blinked uncontrollably, showing a depth reading that fluctuated by thousands of feet every few seconds. On deck, more sailors began reporting shadows, humanoid figures darting between structures, only to vanish when lights flickered back. Some claimed they heard voices just behind them, breath on their necks. Others collapsed from sudden migraines and nosebleeds. Keller returned to the bridge, pale and shaking. He avoided eye contact, gripping the railing as if to steady himself. "I saw it," he whispered. "At the bow. It stared at me. And it knew I saw it." No one questioned him. Not this time. Systems slowly returned, but nothing displayed correctly. Logs were blank. Cameras replayed static. Sonar remained online but useless. And beneath it all, the low hum continued, vibrating deep within the hull, never loud, but always there. The crew was no longer dismissing possibilities. They had crossed a line. Something had seen them. Something that should not exist. By 4 a.m., the atmosphere aboard the USS Sterett had decayed into something unrecognizable, thick with paranoia, silence between crew members charged with unspoken fear. The ship drifted slower now, systems technically online, but every screen flickered as if haunted. No one trusted the electronics anymore. They barely trusted each other. Ensign Paul Webb had been quiet since the blackout, his face pale, movements jittery. He had told Chief Petty Officer David Lang earlier that he kept hearing something through the sonar channel, a rhythmic pattern that did not belong to any sub, whale, or undersea current. Just a sound, distant at first, but now constant. That morning, Lang found Webb slouched in the corner of the engine room, headset clutched tight against his skull. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, pupils dilated almost to black. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Lang approached slowly, sensing something terribly wrong. He knelt and gently took the headset from Webb's hands. It was still active, but instead of static or familiar naval channels, it emitted a low, guttural chant, cyclical, inhuman, almost like breathing, yet structured. The instant Lang held it to his own ears, the sound cut out. Pure silence. "Webb?" he asked quietly, shaking the young officer's shoulder. No response. Later, the corpsman said Webb was catatonic, alive, but unresponsive. Medics moved him to the infirmary, strapping him down for his own safety. Lang sat beside him, unwilling to leave. He kept saying, "It's calling me," Lang muttered under his breath, voice cracking. Over and over again. "I thought it was stress, I should have pulled him off duty sooner." At 6:30 a.m., Webb was gone. No alarms, no footsteps heard, no missing guard reports. Just his boots, neatly placed on the deck outside the infirmary, and the faint impression of bare feet leading toward the starboard side. The railing nearby was untouched, no signs of impact. The ocean was calm. Some believed he jumped. Others swore they had seen a figure on the deck minutes before, tall, pale, and unmoving, watching from the shadows. By the time anyone reacted, it had vanished. Lang stood over the boots, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. He refused to speak for hours. When someone finally pressed him for a statement, all he said was, he was called. Below deck, whispers grew louder among the crew. Some claimed Webb had never really come back from the engine room. That the chant had entered his mind and hollowed him out. That it had used him. A tool. A vessel. The commanding officers issued no search. No alert was sounded. Instead, the logbook entry read, "Personnel AWOL. Presumed overboard." Keller would later say he saw something move in the water after Webb disappeared. Not a splash, more like a ripple folding back in on itself. Like something descending rather than falling. Whatever had taken Webb, it had done so without force, without panic. As if it had simply waited until he was ready. And he had gone willingly. By the time the sun cracked the horizon, the USS Sterett was already steaming westward toward Guam at a steady clip. The tension among the crew was a living thing now, thick, silent, and unforgiving. No one spoke about Webb. No one dared to mention the chant or the shadows. But everyone was thinking the same thing: what just happened to us? At approximately 6:50 a.m., 2 helicopters roared in low over the sea spray and touched down on the flight deck. Men stepped out wearing matte black uniforms, their faces partially obscured by dark glasses. There were no name tags, no insignia. They did not salute. They did not introduce themselves. They simply moved with practiced efficiency and quiet command. Orders were issued without ceremony. All electronic devices were to be surrendered immediately: phones, tablets, personal drives, even watches. Sailors were instructed to return to their quarters while each section of the ship was methodically swept. The bridge was locked down. The Combat Information Center sealed. The logs from the previous 12 hours were confiscated. One of the men pointed directly at the sonar station and said, "That entire system, wipe it." Petty Officer Maria Torres watched helplessly as 2 of the black-clad agents removed Webb's headset, then his bunk sheets, then the locker with his name stenciled on the front. They moved like they had done this before. Clean. Quiet. Clinical. When they left that part of the ship, there was no trace Paul Webb had ever served on the Sterett. "They took everything," she said under her breath. "Even his gear. Like he never existed." In the officer's wardroom, Captain Laura Hensley called the senior crew together. Her face was pale, jaw tight. "This morning's incident," she began, "was a technical malfunction. That is the official report. There was no contact, no breach, no anomaly. If asked, you will confirm this. Any deviation from that line will be treated as insubordination. Possible court-martial." A few brave souls shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, but no one protested. Most just nodded, dead-eyed and silent. Seaman Ryan Keller sat alone in the lower berths, his back pressed to the cool metal wall, thumbing through a pocket-sized notebook. Inside were sketches of what he saw on the deck, a figure made of nothing but shadow, eyes like embers, and strange symbols that came to him in dreams. He tore out one of the pages, folded it, and slipped it into his sock. The rest he shoved deep into his mattress lining. He had already seen a man disappear. He was not about to vanish too. By 10 a.m., the helicopters lifted off again, their blades chopping through the morning haze. The men in black were gone as quickly as they had arrived. No logbook entries recorded their presence. No footage remained from the ship's security cameras. The Sterett was cleaned of its own history. And in that silence, Keller realized something far worse than the thing in the water. The truth was not just being hidden. It was being erased. After the USS Sterett docked back at Guam, nothing felt the same. The crew disembarked in silence, their faces drawn and pale, but no press greeted them. No curious officers. No inquiries. Just an eerie quiet, as if the ship's return had never happened. Within 24 hours, the Navy issued a statement to the press: routine patrol completed without incident. Minor technical anomaly reported during sonar calibration. No injuries. No further comment. A one-paragraph dismissal of a night none of them would ever forget. Back on base, Seaman Ryan Keller was reassigned to administrative duty at Naval Base San Diego with no explanation. One day he was a qualified watch officer aboard a destroyer. Now he spent hours shuffling training rosters and filing requisition forms. No one ever mentioned the Sterett again. Not even in passing. When he tried bringing it up to his new superior officer, he was told firmly, "That file's sealed. Drop it." And just like that, his voice was swallowed whole. Petty Officer Maria Torres was not reassigned, but the message to her was just as clear. She received an unmarked envelope with nothing but a printed warning: discussions of sonar events dated June 15, 2024, violate Navy security protocols. Cease immediately. She burned it the same night, but her hands would not stop shaking. Someone knew she was still asking questions. And then, something even stranger happened. Posts began disappearing. Keller had once seen a thread on a small military-focused forum, someone claiming to be a sailor aboard the Sterett, talking about the chant, the figures on the deck, the man who vanished. The post had hundreds of replies. By morning, it was gone. Not deleted by a moderator, just gone, like it had never been there. The cache had been wiped. The same happened on X. A blurry photo Keller had secretly uploaded from a disposable account, gone within minutes. The username no longer existed. When he searched Sterett Sonar Blackout or Sterett DARPA or anything remotely close, the search results showed 0. Not even speculation. Just news about fleet maintenance or harmless defense drills. It was not a silence, it was an absence. An engineered gap. A few whispers still reached Keller through private forums and burner emails. Rumor suggested that DARPA had been running classified tests involving quantum sonar arrays and deep resonance mapping, something that could detect movement hundreds of miles down. Others believed it opened a frequency window, a type of deep-water acoustic field that could penetrate the Mariana Trench. But when you open a door that far down, you never know what might come through. In his journal, Keller wrote what he could remember in detail. He drew the sonar patterns, the boots left on deck, the glow in Webb's eyes before he vanished. He recorded the chant, at least what his memory allowed, and traced every symbol he could recall from the notebook he had hidden under his mattress. Then he wrote a line he would later leak to an anonymous reporter. They said it was a glitch, but glitches don't leave bootprints in salt. He mailed the journal to a trusted friend outside the service. A week later, that friend stopped replying. Keller never heard from him again. He began to sleep with a flashlight under his pillow. Not because he was afraid of the dark, but because the hum from the depths had returned. Quiet at first, then louder. And it was no longer just in his head. Ask ChatGPT. Ryan Keller never meant to become the center of a conspiracy. After his reassignment turned into a quiet discharge, officially labeled Conduct Unbecoming, he vanished from the Navy's radar. He moved into a cramped apartment outside of San Diego. Bare walls, blackout curtains, and a second-hand desk covered in notes. He told himself he was finished with the Sterett, that the nightmares would fade with distance. But they never did. It started with the hum. At first, it was only in his dreams, deep, throbbing vibrations echoing through dark water. But soon it crept into his waking life. He heard it in the pipes, in the static between radio stations, in the silence just before sleep. Then the chant returned. Faint, unintelligible, but always the same rhythm. Sometimes he would wake to find the old headset from the Sterett, one he smuggled out, stripped of its Navy tags, glowing faintly red, playing back that impossible frequency without being plugged into anything at all. He tried to ignore it, to pretend it was psychological, a side effect of stress or sleep deprivation. But he started seeing things. Flickers in the corners of his vision. Shapes just outside the reach of light. One night, he found the boots he had worn on the Sterett placed neatly at his front door, crusted with salt water, though he had not been near the ocean in weeks. When the journalist finally came, an independent investigator who ran a small YouTube channel focused on military black sites, Keller did not hesitate. He poured out everything, the sonar anomalies, Paul Webb's disappearance, the whispers on the deck, the men in black uniforms who wiped the ship clean. And most of all, he played the audio. The journalist's face changed as the guttural chant filled the room, warping through static and low-frequency growls. He stopped the recording after 20 seconds. "You need to destroy this," he whispered. Keller just shook his head. The story spread, not through major outlets, but through shadowy forums, conspiracy threads, and encrypted audio exchanges. Clips of the chant surfaced on niche websites, paired with animated reenactments and decoded symbols. Some called it a hoax, an elaborate alternate reality game. But others believed. Other sailors from other ships near Guam in June 2024 started messaging Keller through burner accounts. They had heard it too. Some had seen shadows. One claimed he had blacked out for 8 hours during his watch and woke up soaked, despite never leaving his cabin. Keller began to barricade his windows. He removed every mirror from his apartment. When the lights flickered, he sat in the hallway, clutching a flashlight and muttering lines from his journal like a prayer. He stopped answering calls. One night, he posted a final audio file to a locked account. In it, his voice trembled. "I hear it every night, that chant. It knows where I am." The account was deleted 12 minutes later. No one has heard from Ryan Keller since. In March 2025, another destroyer, the USS Russell, was deployed on a quiet patrol assignment near the same coordinates the Sterett had once drifted across. Officially, it was routine training in deep-sea sonar calibration. Unofficially, whispers among the crew suggested something else. The officers avoided eye contact when asked about June 2024. The ship's sonar team received sealed briefings before departure, briefings that no one was allowed to discuss. New crew members laughed it off as Navy superstition. The veterans on board did not laugh. By 3:40 a.m., the ocean was silent. No waves broke. The air was unusually still. Petty Officer Ronald Shea, watching over sonar readings in the operations center, adjusted his headset and squinted at the screen. A faint pulse appeared. Then another. The shape was unmistakable, massive, slow-moving, low in the trench, following no known pattern of marine life or submersible. It moved with purpose, and it was not alone. A second echo followed, then a third, as if something had woken. Shea called for verification. No response. He tried again. The headset hissed with static, then fell into a rhythm. At first, it sounded like mechanical interference. Then, unmistakably, came the chant, guttural, low, the same cadence that had haunted Ryan Keller's final recording. Shea yanked the headset off and stared at it in horror. His screen went black. Around the ship, other stations began reporting power fluctuations. Crew members whispered about a sudden drop in pressure, like the ship itself was being pulled down. On deck, sailors stared into the water. The darkness below seemed alive. Some claimed to see lights, pale, shifting pulses far beneath the surface. The captain, a hardened officer with 2 decades of deployments, ordered all systems shut down except life support. "No signals in or out," she said. "We are not waking it up." Back at Naval Intelligence, analysts received garbled sonar logs from the USS Russell hours later. When they cleaned the data, the shape appeared again. But this time, it had changed. It had grown. One analyst fainted while running spectral filters on the chant embedded in the signal. Another resigned the next day, citing psychological distress. When asked to explain, she simply said, "It speaks in memory." Chief Petty Officer David Lang, now retired and living quietly in Montana, received a letter. No return address. Inside was a printed sonar image, the same pattern he saw on the Sterett before Paul Webb vanished. Scrawled across the bottom in black ink, "It's not gone. It's listening." He folded the paper slowly and tucked it into the back of his journal, beneath the last entry he ever wrote, "The sea doesn't forget. And neither does it." The Mariana Trench remains unsearched at those depths. No further missions are scheduled in that sector. No more statements have been made. The Navy lists the area as a high-risk signal interference zone. That is all. But sailors talk. In quiet bars near bases and over hushed calls to old shipmates, they wonder aloud what it was, and when it might return.